or blue-eyed or dark or tall or short. It is the Eucharist that binds Catholics together. And I can't think of anyone better placed to confirm that belief than a diplomat who spends his life observing the Catholic practices of people throughout the world. Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency Archbishop Charles Balvo.
I hope that you aren't bothered by an afternoon of American accents. And if Father Calloway would like to find an airport where there is no television that you're forced to watch, I can recommend some of the places in the Pacific Islands. His talk, of course, was really very exciting, and it's very informative. And it's sort of like the spicy main course that you've had. And what I'm going to tell you is going to be the nightcap that's going to put you to sleep. Because I don't really have anything that exciting to tell you. We who mystically represent, I'm going to have to read this like this because this is very low. We who mystically represent the cherubim and chant the thrice holy hymn to the life-giving Trinity, let us set aside the cares of life, that we may receive the King of all, who comes invisibly escorted by the divine hosts. These are the words of the cherubic hymn from the liturgy of St. John Chrysostom, which is the form of the sacred liturgy most in use in the Eastern churches, both Catholic and Orthodox. The text of the hymn is short, but as it's sung, it lasts for quite some time according to the musical setting, of which there are many, since it is intended to be human imitation of and supplement to the singing of the heavenly hosts. I have a recording of the hymn that I consider beautiful, but I will not attempt to sing it and make you suffer, also partly because it's in Church Slavonic, since I am not sure if I can get the tune right and if I can stay in key, so I didn't even bring the text with me. The Byzantine liturgy is extremely rich with profound ceremonies and prayers, which are essentially determined by what is perceived to be the direct participation in the mysterious working of Christ's salvation. When worshipers take part in these mystic events, they feel themselves transported into a different world, summed up in the words of this prayer: "We have been filled with your life, which will have no end, and we have tasted of your inexhaustible happiness." Before I came to New Zealand at the end of July 2005, I spent 3 years in the Baltic countries, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. Since these three small republics had been part of the Soviet Union for 50 years, each had a Russian-speaking population of varying proportions, and there were therefore numerous Russian Orthodox churches. If you have ever been inside one, I need not describe the impression. But if you have not, you certainly have the feeling indeed of being transported to another world, surrounded by the magnificence of the sacred art that covers virtually every possible space on the walls and columns, and especially on the iconostasis, which sets off the sanctuary from the rest of the church. The sacred liturgy itself is a transforming experience of prayer and song, particularly in the Slavic language rites, with their rich tradition of choral singing, usually sung a cappella without instruments. The Latin rite, to which most of us, if not all of us here this afternoon belong, including myself, has a different character and different traditions, summed up in the simple expression, noble simplicity. Having lived in Europe for a number of years, I have visited churches from a variety of eras, the oldest, which are the Romanesque, and some of the most majestic, the Gothic, especially the great cathedrals, are architectural masterpieces, but the decor and the sacred art within are usually very sober. In the 16th century, with the beginning of the Baroque and Rococo styles, the presence of many statues, paintings, and mosaics became very notable, and they have a different kind of beauty. As I have visited the various parts of New Zealand, I have appreciated the beauty of the earliest churches, built of wood, and which characterize in their own way the principle of noble simplicity. According to the program of this convention, the theme of this talk is the Eucharist, the source and the summit of the life and the mission of the Church. For most of us, the principal contact and experience that we have of the Eucharist is our participation in the celebration in the liturgy of the Mass on Sunday. Therefore, in this context, and in light of the introduction of the new translation in the English language of the text of the Mass, I thought it would be appropriate to speak of the mystery of the Eucharist in the context of the celebration of the sacred liturgy. The following reflections are my own, which do not come from a theological degree with a specialization in liturgy or sacramental theology. My doctoral degree is in canon law. But as one who has celebrated the Mass for nearly 35 years and who before ordination participated in the Mass since childhood, I'm one of those who the only thing I ever wanted to be was a priest, and I entered the seminary at the earliest possible point you could, which was my first year in high school back in 1964. The first point that I would like to make regards our sense of the sacred and of participation in sacred rites. As I mentioned before, the Byzantine liturgy, by its very style, easily lends itself to the sense that those who participate in it are in a different place and are entering into a space in which the divine and the human meet. Our tradition of noble simplicity may be very different, but the reality is the same. The celebration of the liturgy of the Mass is the place, above all, where the divine and the human meet. The first document that was published by the Second Vatican Council, was published on the 4th of December, 1963, is the Constitution on the Sacred Liturgy, and gives us this basis of understanding the sense of the sacred. Christ is always present in the Church, especially in her liturgical celebrations. He is present in the sacrifice of the Mass, not only in the person of his minister, the same one now offering through the ministry of priests who formerly offered himself on the cross, but especially in the Eucharistic species. Christ, indeed, always associates the Church with himself in the truly great work of giving praise to God and making men and women holy. The Church is his dearly beloved bride who calls to her Lord, and through him offers worship to the Eternal Father. Rightly, then, the liturgy is considered as an exercise of the priestly office of Jesus Christ. In the liturgy, the sanctification of men and women is manifested by things perceptible to the senses, and is effected in a way which is proper to each of these signs. In the liturgy, full public worship is performed by the mystical body of Jesus Christ, that is, by the head and his members. From this it follows that every liturgical celebration, because it is an action of Christ the priest and of his body the Church, is a sacred action surpassing all others. No other action of the Church can match its claim to efficacy nor equal the degree of it. The Mass is sacred. It is different from all other activity because it is an action that comes from God's initiative and at the center of which is God, who, in the beautiful words of the first letter of John, is love. In this way, the love of God was revealed to us. God sent his only Son into the world so that we might have